Hi. Alright, so let's talk about what I've been doing recently. So for those of you who have watched the previous video, you know that I was working on a text-based game, but I realized at some point working through the game that even though I was trying to use a tutorial to get started and then make it mine, I was having trouble like progressing on my own without actually just following the tutorial. And I was kind of struggling with the issue that I had highlighted at the start was that like, oh, whenever I use a tutorial, I find myself not really learning. I kind of just create something and it exists, right? But it doesn't do anything um, for like my learning. It's just like something that exists in space, and I can say that yeah, I've made this, but I haven't learned enough from it to actually be able to make anything with it. And like that never feels good because I want to build things myself. So what I decided to do was I decided to pick some kind of game that I really like, and just try and make a game like it. Try and learn the things that go into it. And the game that I picked was Dead Cells, right? For those of you that don't know, Dead Cells is in my opinion, really, really well made, like, sort of like platformer roguelike, because there's like procedural generation of like maps and stuff, but then there's like a general theme to all of the maps, and like they're all different, but they all have their same things between the different stages, and it's like a movement roguelike. So even though there's a lot of fighting, a really big piece of the game is how fluid the movement feels, right? And that's kind of the first thing that I was trying to get down was, okay, let me make a platformer, and I really love roguelike. So let me make a platformer that's also roguelike, and I want to have good movement, good fighting, but I want to make it my own theme, right? Pretty simple. And so I'm just completely starting from the ground up. The first thing I'm starting with is the basics of the movement system so that I can expand on it and test the game, right? And I'm going to go into a little bit of what I've been doing the last few days, in just a bit, but for now I'm just going to show you what I have. It's very small, but I feel like I've already learned quite a bit more about how to use Unity and just how to use C#, and then like how to build with Unity. And the reason why is because I set out to accomplish a goal, and I research and I test and I try and I watch videos until I figure out how to make the goal apply to what I'm doing. And in that process, by trying to adapt other people's solutions or things that I find to my own project, that is how I learn what those solutions do or how they work in a general sense. Okay, cool. So a couple of things that I covered today is first, like, rigid body and box colliders, right? Those are pretty simple things. Physics, and then collision detectors, right? Pretty simple. I already knew a bit about them, but I'm actually fully using them now to detect collision on a character and apply gravity to my character model, which is currently a square, and then I have this platform, now named platform, that is, suspended in space, doesn't have rigid body, but it does have a collision detector. And using the input manager, I am able to move the character left and right? And then I'm also able to, with a little bit of scripting, add a kind of floaty jump. And I really need to tune this jump because this isn't realistic the way that the physics are working. Or it doesn't feel smooth. It feels like the person who's trying to jump has to spend a lot of time suspended in space that they may not want to, right? And because of that, it can make the game feel slow for two reasons. One, either the geometry that you designed the map around doesn't require this level of jumping, right, to get past. So now, somebody who, let's say that there's like a player-sized object, like right here, right next to the player where my mouse is. The player, to jump over it, would have to jump this high, and now all of this time that they've spent actually past and above the object, still in the air, feels awful. Over time, it makes it a very unsatisfying game to play. Past that, the other thing that you can do is you can actually design the geometry so that this level of jumping is necessary, right? So like maybe, see, where's the peak of the jump? Peak of the jump is around like right here. Maybe I would design a piece of geometry here that the player would have to jump onto like this, right? But then the other thing is that they still have to wait all that time in the air where they're not really controlling their character or doing anything. And because the jump is as unintuitive as it is, it doesn't feel like the person is displaying any skill or achieving anything, more so that they're just wasting time in this jump in the first place, right? And then that's kind of how the games like that don't have great movement tend to feel unsatisfying, even if the game has a cool theme or a cool idea or it's well made. You know, small things like the movement, just user experience pieces, quality of life really impact that. So I want to get that down from the very start. So a couple of things I'm gonna do. First, I'm doing this completely without a sprite, and then I'll probably find some free sprite packs online and just build my first game with that. But first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to like change the speed through the air, and I'm also going to decrease the height of the jump, and I'm also going to increase the movement speed to the peak of the jump, and then the movement speed from the peak of the jump back to the bottom and make it quicker. So they effectively spend less time in the air, but they're able to jump the same height. And then I'll probably add functionality to, based on if you're holding down the key, you're able to extend your jump. If you double tap it, you're able to double jump. Right now, the character is able to double jump. Well, the character is able to do this. And the reason why is because there is no detector for if the character is on the ground or not. So the way I plan to do that is within player movements, I'm going to basically set up a layer mask and so a transform, which is transform and a float, which is basically acting as checking for the ground. And the way that it's going to do that is that there's going to be a layer mask that will be attached to the bottom of the character sprite, and then there will be a boolean that will basically be true or false. And this jump input here is basically going to also at some point require the condition of the is touching ground being true, and the is touching ground is going to be set true if ground check returns that ground layer is touching an object like platform, right? Pretty simple stuff, but that's the plan right now for this. And I also, as per the recommendation of one of the videos that I watched on how to actually implement a proper jumping feature, I'm using a different speed for jump speed because horizontal movement doesn't really have to deal with gravity. I mean, obviously you can build a physics engine or build in the physics that they'll have to deal with gravity or drag or something like that if you really want. But at the moment, only vertical movement has to deal with it, right? So different jump speed because there are different factors in play. So that's kind of the goal here. And yeah, so that is what I've built so far of this. It's taken me maybe like 30 to 40 minutes. I just started working on this recently because I did some more work on the text-based game, and then I decided that I wanted to make something on my own by discovering the things that I needed to know as opposed to being told them. Okay, so what have I been doing for the last few days? Because it's been about 2 or 3 days since I uploaded the last devlog. So some of you who are watching the video right now around the time that this channel was created will know that I'm a CS student, not a game dev student. And with the job market right now in, late summer 2023, things aren't great in terms of like internships and just new grad jobs and things like that. And like I have 2 more years of college, so I'll be fine. Or I hope I'll be fine. But looking for internships now is a little bit difficult. And if I put myself strictly to game dev, it's unlikely, like I'm lowering my chances of finding things. And to have the highest chance of being able to find an internship or just some kind of relevant experience that I can use to snowball into more experience to hit the ground running out of college, I have to look for internships and do work on the software engineering side of things too. And, because that's what a CS degree best sets you up for. This kind of game dev thing that I'm really interested in and that I love is like just passion at the moment that I'm trying to turn into some kind of career by creating, by networking, by reaching out. So I've mainly been focusing on that for the last few days. And what does that look like? After a career fair that I recently attended, a pretty large company reached out to me, gave me a technical assessment, which I passed. I talked a little bit with the recruiter, and now in a few days I will be interviewing with them. And since it is a pretty large company, having made it this far, it makes me really nervous because if I don't pass the technical screening, which will be on the 27th, then I'm not going to be offered an internship, you know? So I've just been spending time studying like data structures and algorithms and leak coding, you know, like the general software engineer toolkit, and trying to prepare for that. Um, that's mostly what I've been working on the last few days. One thing that I did kind of want to say, and like this kind of moves out of the scope of a devlog, but I want to talk about it anyways, is why, hmm, why I chose Dead Cells for the game that I wanted to base this platform around, or not even base it around, but just use as inspiration. I think out of pretty much any game that I've touched in a very, very long time, maybe if ever, Dead Cells probably has the most fluent and like most like fluid movement that feels good to the user, to the player, right? And like there are a couple of factors that tie into movement, right? So if we look at a few games, right? Let's just look at battle royales for now. And we're just discussing the concept of movement as a whole, right? Not movement in platformers, not movement in Dead Cells, just movement. A big issue in battle royales is that to provide like a fresh experience for the user, for the player, they need to have a lot of different areas. They have to have these really huge maps, especially so that all these 100 people that drop on the map don't drop in the same spot. You know, it doesn't feel RNG. It doesn't feel like deathmatchy. It feels like actually skillful. And you know, like if you pull up like the let's see, Fortnite map, Fortnite map. Let's see if I can find the Fortnite map. Yeah, okay, here. So, is this pulling up the Fortnite map? I can't tell. Yeah, it is. Okay. You see how big this is? Right? One of the big issues, in my opinion, that Fortnite had at first was that traversing this map, especially when you were forced to by game objectives like the storm or by other people, felt really slow and tedious, right? So traversing large areas or making big movements felt slow and unpleasant and difficult, right? And they slowly kind of fixed it, you know. They have a lot of movement in the game now in the form of motorcycles, bicycles, whatever, cars. They had mechs at one point. They had these rolling balls. They have like rifts that teleport you, and it's like just like things like that. What they originally had, if I remember from a really long time ago, was they had these balloons that you would like take and you could fly or something like that. I don't 100% remember. It's been about 2 years, 3 years, maybe 4, whenever, since I played Fortnite. But basically the point is that a big issue in games for me is when the movement doesn't feel fluid, and a lot of factors like that are the way that speed works. Crossing distance in an amount of time that doesn't bore the user or doesn't make the user feel like they're not making meaningful progress. That's the big thing. Because, like, it's difficult to make just, like, running around a map entertaining, no matter how fast the user feels like they're moving. But if you can make the user feel like they're making progress, right, it's so much less uninteractive just by a speed change. But you can't always just, you know, ramp up the speed. So there are a lot of different things that you'll do. So for instance, like a really big part of movement in a different battle royale, being Apex Legends, is sliding. Sliding and sliding down terrain. Sliding down terrain gives you a speed boost. And sliding by itself turns your sprint into a larger speed boost, right? And so constantly sliding around the map basically makes you feel like you are making progress faster. Sliding downhill terrain makes you feel like you're making progress faster without actually changing the character's move speed as it exists in fights or in gunfights or in basic movement, right? And so now if we take the concept of like movement, ease of movement, feeling like you're making progress, and we apply it to a game like Dead Cells. Dead Cells, maybe I can pull up some gameplay, but I don't really think I have time. Because again, this is just me talking. I'm just talking, you know. Dead Cells has a couple of different aspects to their movement that really make it possible to feel like it's interactive. And for instance, one of them is constantly being able to roll and getting a speed boost when you roll, especially with like certain like power-ups that you can get. Your movement becomes much more fluid. Another one is that you gain movement speed from a lot of different things in the game that are fairly accessible. Some weapons can give you movement speed, certain interactions with different characters or different monsters and mobs can give you movement speed. I'm pretty sure there's one power-up that's something as simple as rolling through a door and destroying it, which happens very often over the course of a Dead Cell game or a Dead Cell run, gives you movement speed. And the kind of idea behind Dead Cells that's different than the battle royales is that your movement speed, as long as it's manageable for the character and doesn't make you OP, doesn't really need to be low. You know, like in battle royales, it's important, especially given that they're shooter games, for the character to move at a speed that other enemies can realistically hit them, right? That's how gunfights work, is that you shoot each other. And if a character is moving too fast, not only is it hard for them to aim at other people due to their movement speed, but it's hard for other people to aim at them. In a one-person roguelike, that's not really the issue. So Dead Cells takes advantage of this by making fluid movement animations, constantly giving speed boosts, allowing for movement that isn't really restrictive. Like, you can jump through doors and break them, you can roll through enemies, you can jump through platforms, you can double jump, you can jump off of walls after a certain point. And like, I want to kind of emulate the fast pace but not dizzying movement that Dead Cells does a really good job of employing in their game, right? And like, obviously, like, looking at this doesn't really do that at this point. Whenever my Unity loads, I'll show you. Well, I mean, you watched. It doesn't really do that at this point, and one of the reasons is that the camera does not really pan to the player. You know, like, this is just a character moving in space. But then, let me actually see if I can just, like, pull up a Dead Cell. Okay, let's see. I don't know. I don't want to show another person's content, so like Dead Cells movement. Let's see. Let me see if I can find a video. Let's just watch this, honestly. Like, this is just like a Reddit post with a video on it somewhere. Oh, okay. Well, okay, forget it. Honestly, there's no point. Okay. I would go back and edit this out of the video. There's actually a couple of times that I wanted to redo this segment, but like, I didn't really plan this segment. And like, honestly, I'm kind of having fun talking about the concept of movement. So let's just keep on going. So that's kind of why I really wanted to emulate or base myself after Dead Cells, is because I feel like the movement, which is such a huge part of user experience, especially in platformers, was so well executed. And especially when it comes to something as fast-paced as Dead Cells, just playing the game feels entertaining, just moving around in it. Because there's constantly action, there's always something to do. It's such an interesting and well-made game. And I want to take the pieces of that game that really stick out to me and emulate them in mine. Okay, so there's my kind of like poorly thought out but very passionate rant on movement in video games, and the inspiration behind Dead Cells. I think that's everything for today. I don't know how much I'm going to be really uploading my devlogs, because again, I have to prepare for the interview, and like, I'm about to go out for an appointment and I haven't studied at all today because I've just been working on, networking, game dev stuff. I found a mentor, which is pretty cool. Someone introduced me to somebody who is willing to help me, and outside of that, I'm reaching out to people and I'm basically just learning. I'm really enjoying this process of just gaining knowledge, learning more, and waking up and feeling passionate about creating. It's a kind of new feeling because I never really explored game dev before this year, even though I wanted to do it. But it's a very welcome one. Okay, thank you. Goodbye.